I'm Joseph.
And I'm Nick.
This is Fish Jelly.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
Okay. It's been a busy week.
Oh my God, it has.
Nick he's fulfilling his civic duty by participating in jury duty.
The day after I got back from my whirlwind London flight, and I already knew this ahead of time that I was going to have to, report. But, I've had to do that several times since I've lived in LA, and I'm sure I'll get drummed out, right? Nope. They snatched me right up.
Yeah.
And I think we'll probably, I'm not allowed to, because it's still ongoing. I have another at least week of a trial that to deliberate on, etc. But I'll probably talk more about that process when I'm allowed to talk about everything. But wow.
Yeah. So all of last week you were at the courthouse full time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but
fascinating though. I mean, nobody wants their life and rhythm to be interrupted.
Sure.
The fires are still ongoing in LA. It feels like a crazy time right now, but I will say that I'm actually very happy I was selected, and I don't know. I just find it fascinating.
Well, that's good to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a lot to get through, so I'm going to try to not spend too much time on this, but this past week, Wendy Williams got access to a cell phone and decided to do 3 interviews. This was on, I forget what day, Thursday?
Sounds like a fairy tale, like something from mythology. Wednesday? Friday.
Oh, was it Friday?
Yes.
Anyway, she did a series of telephone interviews, and I decided to listen to them. So there were 3. One was with The Breakfast Club. The other was with Don Lemon. And the third was with Jason Lee. And all I have to say is, she was accompanied by her niece. So these were not in-studio interviews. She was just on her phone from she's staying in a facility in New York. Her niece, who's a television, like a local news reporter, was like on the phone via like a conference call. So they weren't in the same room, sort of assisting her aunt, Wendy Williams. I don't know what the purpose of these calls were, because they certainly, at least for me, give me any confidence that she's back in fighting shape.
Mm-hmm.
I think that her argument is that she was diagnosed with like a form of dementia, experiencing some cognitive decline, and she went on this telephone tour to try to prove everyone wrong. I think she did the opposite. But if you try to watch these or listen to these interviews like via YouTube, you see all the comments, and it's giving me Free Britney era, where it's like people who don't know this person or their medical history or the court findings that led to a judge appointing a conservator or a guardian to look after her, who is not her family. You don't have knowledge of any of that. You're saying now free Wendy. So now that's the hashtag.
Well, it's like with Britney. Mm-hmm.
But okay. So The Breakfast Club, for people who don't know, that's DJ Envy, Charlemagne the God, and Just Hilarious now. And Charlemagne the God used to work for Wendy Williams, and over the years has been critical of her. But ever since he started getting his skin lighter and his personality right, he's been a little softer to her. But it seemed like he was trying very hard. And I just think it's so irresponsible to hype her up like she's tip top, even though she sounds like she's losing it. DJ Envy is useless. He has
always been the case.
Yeah, he contributes nothing. I think Just Hilarious knew what was up, so she didn't speak much.
Would you say she's better than Angela Yee? Or are they equivalent?
So Just Hilarious is a comedian, so I enjoy her because I think she's they're just so different, because Angela Yee seems a little more diplomatic.
She did.
So yes. She definitely offers a softer side to Sears compared to the other two.
Mm-hmm.
Just Hilarious is a little more, I think, confident, and even though she's a comedian, I don't because I do listen to the Breakfast Club, and she has her segment where she talks about like gossip or hot topics, and her approach is pretty serious. Like she's not always trying to get a chuckle.
Okay.
So if I had to choose
Interesting.
one, I would say I prefer Just Hilarious.
Okay.
But I think I think she felt like how I was sitting listening to it. Like there's something wrong with this lady, and I don't know why we're talking to her. So she didn't really. And of course, they let Charlemagne take the lead because he and Wendy have a personal relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of that first interview, they're like, I think it was actually Just Hilarious who said, Wendy, what can we do? How can we help you? And so that's when the niece piped in and had no plan. Like, why are you participating in these phone interviews and you guys don't have a plan? Like, what was the purpose of this? So she's like, well, just getting social
Engagement.
social engagement, free Wendy. And Charlemagne says, well, give us the address of the Guardian. We can go protest in front of her house. And it's like,
oh my
no,
God.
don't do that.
The Guardian was a court appointed. That is not going to help anything.
Right.
Jesus
so, of course, they're like, no, don't do that. Well, you should have a GoFundMe. And so the niece is like, oh, I didn't think about that. Okay, the second interview was with Don Lemon. And I already have a sour taste in my mouth about Don Lemon. I don't care for him. I think he comes across as so fake.
Because, yes, that's true.
And
because he is fake.
His interview with her was only like 14 minutes, but he milked like an hour plus episode out of it, talking about how he got to know her. It just all felt very fake. Basically, that Wendy used to reach out to him. And then when she initially got sick and, there were like guest hosts for her show, he did it twice, but that CNN wouldn't let him. That he claims that they offered for him to do it even more, but that CNN wouldn't let him because he was under contract with them. But that after that, Wendy would talk to him a lot and said that she was going through it. So he invited her to his home, like in the Hamptons or something, and they spent time. And he was telling very personal stories that he said she wouldn't mind because she has revealed some of these things in the documentary, which I find funny because she's suing the producers of the documentary because she feels like she was shown in a negative light. Mm-hmm. But we'll get back to that. So he's telling these stories about how she sat there in my guest room and took her wig off and bared her soul and blah, blah, blah. I just think he sounds like such...
She's been doing that.
I just don't like that.
We've all seen the foot, the leg. We've seen her without a wig.
Yeah.
Okay.
But she... And again, well, not again, but to reiterate something I've said before, I'm obviously not a medical professional. I'm not a mental health professional. I'm not a social worker. I'm not a court-appointed anything. But I did work for 2 years in a facility like the one Wendy Williams is currently being held in. So basically, it's like a mental health nursing home that's for people who are basically committed there by a court. Mm-hmm. Like they're vulnerable adults, can't take care of themselves. Most of the building I was in was 4 floors, and the top 2 floors were for people suffering from dementia. And they were locked in. They couldn't come and go as they pleased. And then we were dealing with all of their guardians. Most of the time were family, but often were court appointed because family was not involved. Mm-hmm. So I am familiar with that dynamic. And I will say Don Lemon didn't play himself out as hard as Charlemagne did, because Charlemagne was really acting like Wendy sounded like she was better than ever. Ain't no way. Don was trying to be diplomatic, and then I think he took the chicken shit route by asking his viewers, send me a comment, tell me what you think. And then he was reading the comments and sort of not agreeing or disagreeing. Ultimately, he did say, do I think she sounds like the old Wendy? No. Do I think she could do a show again? Yeah, because Wendy's saying she doesn't want to be on TV every day. She kind of wants to do it whenever she wants, which is obviously not how that kind of production works.
Okay, Broadway, I'm going to predict that we're going to get something that's going to be in the vein of a Grey Gardensy type docu something.
Then Jason Lee, who people might know, he's just messy. And he, of course, exploited his relationship with her, saying they were friends and that, at one point he goes, Wendy, you promised me that we would exchange our famous white ladies. I was going to introduce you to Madonna and you were going to introduce me to Kelly Ripa. And then...
That's not equivalent.
Oh, yeah, but no. Then like he just sounds like... Here's the thing. if that niece, that Wendy's niece, emailed us and said, "Hey, would you guys want to do an interview with Wendy Williams?" Hell yeah. But I would do the interview and then I would bookend it with my commentary. And I would be honest that no, she sounds like. Here's the thing. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that when Wendy Williams was at her peak, let's say 2018, on her show doing her Hot Topics, that was like peak Wendy Williams, right?
Sure.
Let's say I'm not as intelligent, articulate, or thoughtful as Wendy Williams was back then. Let's just say that that's true. Like, me talking right now is not as competent as she was then.
Okay.
if I switched to talking the way Wendy Williams was talking in those interviews last week, there'd be comments and Instagram messages and phone calls asking if I was okay. So I don't know how someone who was known for being able to captivate people by just sitting and talking. This lady would literally sit on a chair with her tea and just talk shit. And captivated an entire country, got all these ratings, high viewership every day at the same time.
About the most inane shit sometimes.
And that is a skill.
I think she used to, I remember her lighting a Slim Jim on fire.
But don't you agree, to be able to captivate people by talking about the most inane, pointless things is a skill? Even Don Lemon said that he was inspired by her because it's like, for her to sit there and get people's attention talking about things that we didn't know we should care about is a skill. And then to hear her in these 3 interviews that totaled like maybe 45 minutes, I would say 50% of what she was saying was, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Another 10% was listen. And then the remaining 60% or 40% was her just repeating the same things. Again, I am not a person qualified to diagnose dementia or anything else, but I would say, I mean, wouldn't a sign of that be losing like focus, losing track of the conversation, being repetitive?
Yes.
Like,
you would still be able to refer her to, you know enough to know that this is uncomfortable and that she needs to speak with a medical health professional in some capacity, is what it seems like. And she should not be out here. She's not primetime ready.
Here's the other thing that people were saying, like in the comments, people who called in to the show, that they think it's a crime that she can't be with her family. Now, again, I did work for 2 years in a facility with people who are being held under similar circumstances. I also have personal experience with this. And what I know is, for people who only have access to their SSI benefits, right? Like maybe they get $1,300 a month. Families fight over that.
Yes.
Families elect to not get the best care for their loved ones because they want that money, right? Like they'll say, I'll be the PCA, I'll take that money. Let's not give it to someone who's, you know, who will come and do the job. Or they won't even report their family as needing assistance because they just want to collect those checks. So they let grandma just sit in that bed and do nothing.
Yep.
And that's for like $900, $1,000, $2,000 a month. But imagine if your loved one is worth $200 million. Imagine the kind of fight you're going to put up to have access to their finances.
Right.
A judge, social workers, attorneys, psychologists, professionals evaluated this lady's medical records, her psych evaluations, her finances, and determined that not only is she a vulnerable adult who can't care for herself, but also that her family shouldn't be allowed to take care of her. So what does that mean? That means that they were doing some weird shit. What if I told you that in the 6-month period that Wendy lived with, because we watched that documentary.
I watched most of it. That was highly.
Oh, you didn't finish the second part, but you watched enough. What if I told you that in the 6-month period that she did go live with her son and that nephew?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yep. What if I told you in that 6-month period, she lost like 30 pounds.
They can't
she got
control
sick.
her. Yeah, she's drinking.
She's drinking, which she shouldn't be. She wasn't taking her medication. And in that 6-month period, she purchased 2 G-Wagons, one for the son, one for the nephew, totaling like $330,000. She spent another $400,000 on designer clothes and accessories for her son and nephew. She also bought them a condo, and she spent $175,000 on vacations that she did not attend. in a 6-month period. So she spent like almost $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
If I told you that, knowing that also during that 6-month period, she was malnourished, she wasn't taking her medications, wouldn't you say that that would constitute neglect?
Yes.
Okay. So then Wendy is saying that the guardian is stealing her money. First of all, court-appointed people don't work for free.
No,
Okay.
they don't. Mm-mm.
That lady is not making millions of dollars. Okay. She's getting a fee, I'm sure. And then I'm sure, like, because Wendy says, well, that one time I went to Miami, that guardian with my money paid for the flight to go with me to Miami.
Yes, because she has to accompany you.
Yes, because she would have to. Why should taxpayers pay
you
for you to take a trip when you're required to have a guardian with you and you're worth hundreds of millions of dollars?
You have a shadow. You now have to fund to accompany you on your travels. Yes.
If it was someone's grandma who only got $1,100 a month in benefits, the government's not going to pay for her to travel to Miami either.
No.
Like they're going to find a way to pay it themselves. So I think that if you compare the way Wendy Williams sounded in that documentary versus how she sounded now, she does sound better. She's not tip top, but she sounds better. She's also safe and warm somewhere. She doesn't like it. She keeps complaining about how all the people there are old and they're too old for her.
Well, they probably are because she has dementia.
She has early onset dementia.
She's young. She's young to have it. So yes.
She's 60. She's young. But it's like her condition seems to improve. She doesn't have access to alcohol or drugs if that's what she was doing. So yeah, she's doing better because she's being forced to be taken care of. When she was with her family or left to her own devices, she was not taking care of herself. I just think it's so reckless for people to just say it's wrong that they're not letting her with her family. What if her family's taking advantage of her? You don't know. There's a reason why this was initiated. Is the system flawed in some ways? Yes, there are lots of examples of people getting stuck in the system. But I think that initial evaluation that led to this, that wasn't just like some random thing that happened. Someone was abusing her finances. Someone was not taking care of her. She was getting ill. And so someone had to take control. Just because she can verbalize that she doesn't like her accommodations, the facility she's in is a luxury facility, is like beside the point. She is not. I believe that Wendy could not perform her activities of daily living. I think if you let Wendy free and gave her all her credit cards and said, go ahead, girl. Do I think that Wendy Williams could go and find her own apartment and get her food and get on the internet and do all? No, I don't think so. I think she requires a lot of help, partially because she's been a celebrity for a long time and she's accustomed to it. But now that she doesn't have that infrastructure and all this money, I think someone would rob her. I think that parasites would come into her life and bleed her of all her money.
Well, that's already been happening. So yes.
The other thing is, everyone trying to advocate for her to be free. You don't know her finances. What if she was being bled dry prior to this and now her finances are stable? What if in the last 2 years, well, she's been in this thing for 3 years. What if in the last 3 years, her money's been straight? Like, it's been sitting where it's supposed to be. No one's sucking it dry. Like, her money's safe. Then what are we talking about? Well, she should have the right to buy what she wants for her family. Not if she's not of sound mind and body and like people are taking advantage of her.
I guess I just don't understand the aim of why any of that happened last week. I mean, I understand that all publicity is good publicity, but what is the ultimate goal here for her to be talking
I'm
to
glad
these people?
Okay, so to wrap it up, so after the second interview, then when Don Lemon asked the niece, what can we do? She goes, well, social engagement, #free Wendy, and I think I'm going to start
fucking matters.
I think I'm going to start a GoFundMe. Then by Jason Lee's interview, of course, at the very end, he said, what can we do to help Wendy? And the niece goes, social engagement, #free Wendy, and people can donate to the GoFundMe. Okay, my problem with the GoFundMe, which I already went on a rant on last week, is Wendy, during all 3 interviews, couldn't stop talking about how much money she has.
Yeah, why am I going to give this woman money?
Why would I give her money then? Like, it just, none of it makes sense. Wendy is contradicting the things her niece is saying. Wendy doesn't seem to, listen, For anyone who listened to all 3 interviews and you think that she sounds like she is tip top, you have cognitive delay. Like, I mean, there's just no way. She couldn't even understand some of the questions they were asking her. Like, it totally flew over her head.
Dissonance.
You know, people said a lot of mean things initially about Wendy. Like, that's what she gets. Karma's a bitch. She was mean to people. That's not how that works. Like, she was doing her job. She was giving the people what they wanted, and y'all ate it up. So she doesn't deserve to be unwell. So I want her to be safe and warm, and I don't want people taking advantage of her. And I think that we should allow professionals who know her medical history, her financial history, her family background to make those decisions.
And I think what's most disappointing, okay, I didn't listen to these interviews, one, because my time was usurped this week. But I think it's disappointing that not only are people trying to, and I think like somebody like a Don Lemon or Charlemagne the God or somebody saying that, you know, she sounds like the Wendy I used to know or doesn't or whatever, but sounds capable. I think that is irresponsible because it's also trying to make them look like what they're doing is okay. And it's what's really upsetting is that we live in a time where there's no accountability for somebody that say that you agreed to interview her and clearly things aren't right. There's nobody on the record saying like, you know what, I'm going to stop this here because I don't think that it would be beneficial for us to move forward with this because it doesn't seem right. Nobody's stopping themselves because shit doesn't seem right. Nobody wants to do the right thing. And I think, you know, that's been for a long time.
Or ask the tough questions like
something like, what is the point?
I mean, I will say, I do think Dawn asked, how come your family can't be involved? And then, of course...
Is that a tough question? That's an obvious one.
But Wendy couldn't answer it. She talks in circles. Of course, the niece is like... And, you know, the other shameful thing is this niece, the reporter, she's an educated young woman. Like, she knows that this is crazy. But, you know, I would assume that it doesn't hurt her career to be attached to her very famous aunt who she's advocating for.
Of course not.
And for her to get on, like, because she does local news, but now she gets access to national broadcast. I'm saying that I think this niece is doing this partially because it benefits her too. She's getting a lot of exposure. Her job is to be on TV.
It's opportunistic. There's an opportunistic side to this.
Not well. You know your aunt is not well. Come on.
Yes.
Come on.
Because if you really cared, you would be like, she is not talking to anyone right now.
Then Wendy going on about her. She doesn't even know how her phone works. She kept saying that they gave her this phone, that her phones were taken away. Yeah, probably because the people who were abusing you had access to you.
Yeah.
So then they gave Wendy a different phone. And then in the first 2 interviews, she kept saying, my phone is like, they gave me this phone where I can only call out, but you can't call me. So then it's like, what kind of phone is that? What are you talking about? Then the 3rd interview, she says, well, yeah, I can only call you because if you call in, they have your number. What? Don't you know that we can see the numbers you call and receive? It's just like, she doesn't know what she's talking about. So much of what Wendy was saying made no damn sense. I don't know how anyone could even say that she's back to normal. She does not sound well. But that's my rant. It went on way longer than I wanted it to. But moving on to something lighter, Donnell Rawlings, a comedian who I really like, people would know him from The Wire and The Chappelle Show. He's the one who says, I'm rich, bitch. He was on Club Shay Shay, and Shannon asked him about, because he asked every black male comedian what they think about doing drag. And Donnell didn't have such a strong opinion. And he said that he worked on a project that was filmed at Tyler Perry Studios. And he said when he rolled in there and saw like the enormity of what Tyler Perry built off of wearing a dress, he was like, well, hand me a dress.
Well, that's kind of underselling him a bit.
No.
But sure.
But the point of me bringing him up is I learned something fun. He said that Donnell said that he was offered the role of Holiday Heart. Like, he was offered to audition.
Oh my God.
And for people who don't know, Holiday Heart is in my top 4 in my Letterboxd, but it's
Letterboxd.
It's a really lovely, heartwarming story revolving around the Christmas time,
with Ving Rhames,
starring Ving Rhames and
Mhm.
Alfred Woodard. But
Mhm.
Ving Rhames plays a drag queen
and
named
directed by Robert Townsend. So, yeah.
yes, plays a drag queen named Holiday Heart,
Who loves Diana Ross.
yes. And Donnell said that it wasn't a fit, but that he had considered it. And then after seeing Ving Rhames play it, it's like, well, clearly
the right choice was
the right choice was made. And then Donnell goes on. Donnell has a really funny joke in his Netflix special because Donnell has a gay brother.
Mm-hmm.
And in the Club Shay
interview, is that the potato salad?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, the joke is that because Donnell it's kind of brilliant how he sets up the joke, because he talks about like cancel culture and how we can't talk about certain things. And he says, and I'll probably, I'll probably get canceled for this, but I need to say this. And then he goes, gay men. And then there's a pause, like you expect him to say something really controversial.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, gay men make the best potato salad. It's such a great joke in the special. But anyway, he talks about his gay brother and talks about how his family reacted to it and homophobia within the Black community. But that their dad, the way their dad acknowledged the gay brother, because basically the gay brother came out by introducing them to his boyfriend partner.
Mm-hmm.
But the brother had introduced the dad to the partner first, and then Donnell later. So then Donnell, ran to the dad to be like, oh my God, I think whatever the brother's name is told me he was gay. And the dad basically said like, yeah, but that guy's a good guy. So in his way, he acknowledged that he supported his son. But blah, blah, blah. I just thought it was a cute a cute trivia that Donnell Rawlings could. Can you imagine Donnell Rawlings' Holiday Heart?
Well, I'm trying to picture that now, but I heard you listening to that interview, and I think the portion I caught was they were talking about interracial, not relationships per se, but connections.
Yeah,
which I've heard Donnell talk about in his stand-up as well. But I thought it was funny that Shannon Sharp, I believe, said that he doesn't do that.
Well, he often tries to deflect rumors that he is, I think they called him like what are they, some kind of snow bunny, or I don't know, but he always tries to deflect that, because even Monique tried to call his ass out.
Yeah, she did, which means he does, and he is on the record trying not to. But again, I mean, the level of intensity and the scrutiny we have for people doing what they want to do with other consenting adults is disturbing.
Sure.
Like, let people do what they would like to do.
But moving on to our segment 5 on the Black hand side, Nick is going to talk about 5 Black filmmakers who are not Tyler Perry.
And if you need to introduce the new section again?
Why?
Oh, I don't know. The point of it?
Oh, well,
I guess that was it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first on this week's list, I have he's a newer filmmaker, but should be on everybody's radar this year because of Nickel Boys, which I believe I liked more than you. But I think that if you haven't seen it, please see Nickel Boys. Previously, he directed an Oscar-nominated documentary called Hale County This Evening, which he himself is kind of a subject in, because it's a snapshot of kind of just regular moments in the time and place that the title is referencing. But and I think that he brings that aesthetic a bit to this adaptation of Nickel Boys, which I thought was very well done. It's cinema as poetry. But anyway, looking forward to what he continues to do. But those are the 2 features he has under his belt right now. Next on my list, I have an OG, though, Cheryl Dunye, who you are familiar with. Her biggest film that, is a classic of queer cinema is The Watermelon Woman.
Yep.
Which I believe we have a review out there for.
Mm-hmm.
But she's done a lot. She's been around a minute. I also really like Stranger Inside, which gave Yolanda Ross her first big break, playing an incarcerated woman who meets her mother in the same facility.
Oh,
Very interesting film, highly recommended. And then another film I really like of hers, I think I saw it at Outfest in, I don't know, but must have been 2012. Called The Owls, and Owls is an acronym for old wise lesbian. Uh, I remember being tickled by that film as well, and it's probably it's clearly lesser known, but if you can find that, it's worth a watch. Next is also somebody a bit newer. I'm trying to stick to people that are alive still, because the point of this is to be like, why aren't these people getting more money to make things? Or why
right.
isn't Tyler Perry throwing money at all these very talented, the very talented Black people around the world that are tried and true, and have to wait a long time between their next projects? But uh, Rungano Nyoni is next on my list, and she, I believe, is from Zambia. Her first film got a lot of attention. It's called I Am Not a Witch, which, of course, if you haven't seen it, I recommend. And it's about an 8-year-old girl that is convicted of witchcraft and sentenced to do hard labor. So it's not a light film. I also really like her 2024 follow up. It's called On Becoming a Guinea Fowl. And I think that's an A24 film. I saw it at Cannes. I don't think it's been released yet, but be sure to keep that on your radar, because I think that is fascinating. It's about intergenerational abuse and trauma in this one family that's centering around the mysterious death of this uncle that it turns out that he really kind of was a terrible person. And it's all about this kind of his funeral rites, and all these women, including a central female character, kind of trying to deal with that and being forced to tap into something that she has that she thought she had buried within herself decades prior, but very much worth it. Next on my list is Thomas Carter. He's a little more mainstream at the beginning of his career, and in the past, I don't know, 10 to 15 years, he's kind of been relegated to television. But when he was making feature films, I think at the height of that was Coach Carter, starring Samuel L. Jackson, which is probably his most successful of the films that he was able to make. I think that a nice throwback is Metro, starring Eddie Murphy, which was not a hit. And I would even say that this is kind of a highly flawed film, but it's a lot of fun. That's late 90s period Eddie Murphy, where he was starring in all kinds of things. And one of them was this Thomas Carter feature. And another film, I've never seen this, but it's very well known, and I think we have plans to watch this in the near future, is Save the Last Dance.
You know what? Maybe that could be the next live. Our would be dance movies.
There you go. Well, that doesn't guarantee that would win, though. So it would still
That's
elude.
true.
It would still elude my eyes.
Well, to all the people listening, if you want to hear us review Save the Last Dance, you better vote for that one when the time comes.
I've never seen it. I'm from northern Minnesota, and my first memory of that movie, the year it came out, I was probably was I in 10th grade? I remember this stupid girl. She was a cheerleader. It was between first and second period. All of a sudden, the bell rang, and this girl came out like an ostrich screaming down the hallway, "I love Save the Last Dance."
Oh, wow. She was churched.
And she was, of course, where I'm from, there was 99% white people, so you can imagine. Anyway. And ever since then, I've thought of that dumb girl, that ostrich girl. Anyway, the last person on this week's list of 5 on the black hand side is Theodore Witcher, who's only done one film to date, but it is a pretty damn good film, and it's called Love Jones. And if you haven't seen it, Criterion has a lovely new restoration out in the past couple of years, and I believe it's also streaming on their channel, starring Nia Long. See it. I think it won a major award at Sundance. But then where did this person go? Why did such kind of a major film, and these, the 90s was a very fruitful time for Black independent film.
Yeah.
And this is actually a major title, I'd say, from that period. And where did he go? Where has he been? I think he did one music video since then. I do have good news to report. He has written or co-written a script that Elegance Bratton is directing. And you know Mr. Bratton because we watched his semi-autobiographical film, The Inspection, which starred
Gab's Union.
and I believe Raul Castillo. He has written a new script. Bratton is directing it, and it's going to star Mark Wahlberg and Sterling K. Brown. So there is something new
Oh,
on the horizon. But I feel like if why has no one financed anything by this person having directed Love Jones? I just don't understand it, and I guess that is
well, that's the purpose of this.
the purpose of the section. That I don't, to bring it up in conversation, because I'm sure it's been spoken about by many far greater than myself. But wow.
Well, thank you for your time.
Mm.
I don't have anything in the restaurant section. I didn't go anywhere this past week.
I've been stuck around Grand Central Market, so I actually have eaten things.
And by the courthouse, yeah.
I tried. So every time we've gone to Grand Central Market, it's usually on the weekend, and Egg Slut is a very popular place there, and there's always a line, and I refuse to wait in line, especially for breakfast or brunch food. I'm not waiting in line for that shit. Anyway, there was no line, so I'm like, let me try this Egg Slut out, and I paid $13 for a little thing, and it was fine. I think I got their Fairfax sandwich. I like a flavorful mayo, and that was advertised as being part of this egg cheese sandwich, and that this would guided my decision, and it was fine. It wasn't worth $13. It wasn't worth waiting.
Yeah, I think 13 is kind of a lot for a sandwich the size of a bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit.
And then one day I went to that chop suey place and had some Mongolian chicken. That was very underwhelming to me, although I did like the broth that seems to come with all their dishes. And then a day after that, I ate at some ghost sandwich place kind of tucked in the back, and that I got a spicy-ish sandwich. I gave you a little bit of that. That was okay. Also overpriced. The best thing so far, we usually go to one of the Mexican places, of which there are several many, and you can't go wrong with the torta.
Do most of the jurors go to Grand Central Market?
I see a lot of them, and now as the trial has been progressing, their bonds have been attempted to be made, and so now I'm starting to have to elude people because they want to eat lunch with me, and that is
I don't know why anyone want to do that.
It's a 90-minute period, but also I have absolutely no time to myself except that 90-minute lunch period during the day while this is ongoing. So the last thing I want to do, and we're not supposed to talk amongst ourselves, but of course that's what we have best to bond about. I can only talk about the fires, the weather, or any other kind of nonsense for so long, especially because I can't deduce if these people are dumb yet or not. So I don't know if I'm going to be arguing with them in a few days' time, because I am very opinionated about what's going on in the decision we have to make, and I will not relent. Anyway, so I've seen a lot.
Such a pleasure to be around.
Hey, you know what? I was given the job to do. I'm taking it seriously, and we have to take notes. My notebook is filled, and I'm writing myself little LOLs along the way. It is a show. Oh my God, the bitchiness of these lawyers. It is so bitchy. And the judge, it is over something that's really not that terribly exciting. It is a lot of fun. Anyway.
Okay, there is something in the sorry to this man section.
Oh God.
Will there ever be a time when I say this and you don't react?
Well, I was regretting because I'm not...
Because what it says is that you're not okay with mistakes.
No, I am, but I'm always...
But you're not, because you will always react.
Well, I don't want to make mistakes, so I'm bummed when I do.
But you don't know what it is.
Tell me. Say it. Get it out. Come on. Plunge the dagger in.
This is why people don't like telling the truth or letting people know. Anyway, I had said that Michael Pena is in that Shyamalan movie, The Devil.
Oh, yes, and I believe I said that sounds right.
But it's not Michael Pena, it's Jacob Vargas.
Okay. And did I mispronounce Leimert Park? We looked at houses there, and I'm pretty sure the real estate agent also said that.
I think someone commented that they live there and they call it Leimert.
Okay.
So so it's Leimert.
Leimert? Okay. It's not potato, it's Leimert. But apologies.
Films released we didn't cover. Grand Theft Hamlet.
This sounded really interesting. It's a documentary directed by Sam Crane and Penny Grills. That name is amazing. Anyway, it's about somebody programming Shakespeare's Hamlet into Grand Theft Auto.
What?
That sounds really strange and interesting, but haven't watched it.
I'm Still Here.
This, in a perfect world, we probably would have covered. I already have a written review out there for it because I saw it in Venice, and Fernanda Torres won a Golden Globe for her performance in it. It's a new Walter Salles film. It's been a while since he's done anything. Probably Brazil's premier contemporary director, who I like well enough. I thought this was actually really dry and a bit standard, and but it's based on a very despairing time in Brazil's history during the 70s when, much like in Chile, the military dictatorship was snatching people up and murdering them, and they disappeared. And this is based on the memoir of the son of one such man, and it's told through the eyes of the mother, played by Fernanda Torres, who does give an excellent performance. And then it also reunites at the very end of the film Fernanda Montenegro from, I think, Salles' best film, Central Station. But if you're watching it for Montenegro, she really only pops up at the very end and does look very, I mean, she's a really old lady now. Anyway, I think that it should be seen. I think that I've seen depictions of these kinds of things done better. You know what? I think what drives me crazy is the need to include Montenegro, who I think I learned recently is the actual real life mother of Fernanda Torres. Anyway, is that time jump where we have to see her. I think if it had just ended in the 1970s, I don't know. There was something a little lacking in the film for me, but I think it's very well done. It's probably going to get some Oscar love, so good for it.
If anyone wants to see a funny performance, get on YouTube and look up Tisha Campbell live on Good Day LA. She performs a song called Still Here, but the lyrics are I'm still here, but she spells it steel, like STEEL, like metal. Yeah, I'll just say that.
Okay.
Okay, next is Night Call.
I might still watch this. It's a French film directed by Michel Blanchard, and it's well, it's about a locksmith who lets this girl into an apartment, but it turns out she's lied about her identity once he learns once they open that apartment door. Sounds intriguing, but I think one of the screenwriters is Guy Marchand, who is himself a director and screenwriter who has, well, at least probably 20 some years ago, was doing very interesting things in my opinion, but I might catch up with that sometime this week.
Lastly, Wish You Were Here.
Julia Stiles makes her directorial debut with this film in something that sounds a lot like The Fault in Our Stars, because it's about a girl who falls in love with somebody who I believe is terminally ill. Yeah. And who stars in it? Oh, Isabel Fuhrman, who, I'm sorry, has always been a little bit. She you know her as the original Orphan girl.
Okay.
And you remember Orphan?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Projects of interest. Henry Johnson.
David Mamet apparently directed a movie that shot for 5 days starring Shia LaBeouf, and it's called Henry Johnson.
Liberty.
Spike Lee, who is doing a reimagining of Akira Kurosawa's High and Low, which I believe has finished filming, is already announced I think it's a military drama called Liberty. So it's nice to see Mr. Lee so busy.
Our Apprenticeship.
Raisuke Hamaguchi has apparently is shooting a new film this year called Our Apprenticeship. I don't know anything about it, but of course, anything Hamaguchi's directing, I'm going to be seeing.
Burning Rainbow Farm.
Justin Kurzel, who I'm glad to see is returning to what he's actually really good at over the past several years, and leaving Hollywood behind, who doesn't really have a good place for him. You watched his new film this year, The Order, starring Jude Law and Nicholas Hoult.
Mm-hmm.
He's recruited Sebastian Stan for. It sounds like it's based on from the another FBI type film about something going on with some agent based on a true story, but should be good.
Fjord.
Christian Mungiu, one of the premier titans from the new Romanian wave of the 2000s, has announced a new project, and it's I think it'll be the first feature to shoot outside of Romania, because he's going to Norway, and it's starring Renata Rensva, who you know from this year's A Different Man. She had 3 movies this year. I think that's the only one you saw.
All right.
4
Oh
movies.
no,
She had
there's
4
one
movies
more.
this year. Anyway.
There's one more, an untitled Asghar Farhadi film.
I haven't really loved Asghar Farhadi. Well, that's not true. I think was it his 3rd film that was the huge breakout? One Berlin was A Separation, which is fantastic. And then he, went to France, went to Spain, and did some with the past. And I think that Penelope Cruz film everyone knows, I think is terrible. But then he returned to Iran, and I know that I think he was brought to court about potential plagiarism. I don't remember if he won or not. I think he did. But I really liked his last feature, A Hero. I think it was very well done. And the salesman is interesting enough. But he apparently is going to New York City for his next feature. So that could be interesting.
This past week on our Patreon, we reviewed Jesus Christ Superstar and The Swimmer. And we're also continuing coverage of RuPaul's Drag Race Season 17.
The Song That Never Ends, yep.
Unfortunately, there are entries in the obituary section.
There are.
I had missed last week, but a character actor named Art Evans died. I know him from, on the TV show A Different World, he played Ron's dad. But he also, he did a ton of TV, a ton of movies.
Yes.
I think maybe his most known TV or movie role would be in Die Hard 2. But he's in JoJo Dancer, Your Life is Calling, Claudine.
A lot of genre work. Tales from the Hood, Death Wish, Sisters,
School Days,
the first Fright Night, Christine.
Yeah, so he died at the age of 82 from complications from diabetes. Oh. All right. Then Joan Plowright died.
Yeah.
Who I know from, what did we just watch her in?
The Vanessa Williams dance movie. What was it called?
Oh, God.
What? You selected it for a podcast film.
Podcast.
Dance with Me.
That's where I know her from?
Well, you shouldn't know her just from that, but
I recognize her face.
Like Americans might know her best from Dennis the Menace or maybe 101 Dalmatians. But she was Laurence Olivier.
Oh, no. Brimstone and Treacle.
Oh, yeah. We just did watch her in that, too.
That's what I was thinking.
That was a Patreon film.
She's in Three Sisters?
You know Chekhov?
What's the movie with Sissy Spacek?
That's Three Women.
I'm thinking of Three Women.
Okay, yeah. No, she did do an adaptation of Chekhov's Three Women.
Know Chekhov. You think I'm a moron.
No, I was
show you how dumb I am.
No, but I was surprised that
one day you're going to be surprised. Go ahead.
Well, I like Chekhov. Anyway, you might know her from Bringing Down the House. She has a small role.
That's what it is. Bringing Down the House.
Yes, but classically,
who directed that?
Adam Shankman, who you know as a judge, or he's appeared several times on RuPaul's Drag Race.
That's right. That's who. Yes, Adam Shankman.
Mm-hmm. He's done a lot of that. Is by far probably the best thing he's directed. Well, no, I like Disenchanted, the sequel to Enchanted, but usually I don't really care for him. Anyway, Bringing Down the House. But yeah, Joan Plowright, she was she's the second wife of Laurence Olivier. His first was, of course, Vivian Leigh, who lost her mind. But I believe, I remember as a kid when Dennis the Menace came out, my mother talking about Joan Plowright outing Laurence Olivier as at least a bisexual. But she had just this funny, cute little face, and she often played a little fuddy-duddy. She was only Oscar nominated once, which seems crazy, for Enchanted April, which is a film that I have seen a while ago, which is nice. Directed by Mike Newell. We'll speak about him later in our films we watch for fun. It reminds me, I really want to rewatch Tea with Mussolini, which also stars Cher and Maggie Smith, who died last year, and Lily Tomlin and Judi Dench. Anyway.
And of course, David Lynch died. So David Lynch is an American filmmaker who means a lot to a lot of people.
He means a lot to me. Mm-hmm.
He means a lot to you.
Yeah.
And to start, you have a list of some of your favorite David Lynch films.
I learned the news of his death. I mean, he hasn't been doing well for a while. His emphysema was so bad that he just was not leaving the house. So it's not ultimately a surprise, but I got it. Court was on recess, and I turned my phone on, and I got a message from you and a ton of other people. And then
Was his emphysema due to smoking?
yes, he had a romance with cigarettes. He was in love with smoking, and he's been very upfront and honest about that. And but something that he always felt like he needed. And then anyway, he's also in his 70s, which is not young, but it's the Netflix CEO, what's his name, Ted Sarandos, has said that they were collaborating with him on something, that his health issues and COVID, I think, kind of put the kibosh on. But so
you were upset to hear of his passing.
I was upset to learn of it and felt like I had no moment to process either, because I had to go right back into court. I was asked if I would write kind of like a tribute piece to him, but I just felt like I did
for Spin,
and I said I declined to, because I don't have the time. I wouldn't have had the time I needed to pump something out like that, having all of my days taken away from me right now. And I don't know. I think I just wanted to not write it. I just didn't want to. I kind of didn't want to. I still don't even really want to deal with the fact that he died, because he did mean a lot to me as a kid who watched his films often too young before I probably should have watched them. Like, he opened me up to a world of narrative possibility, and even watching things that I wasn't quite comprehending at the time, but felt in a way that was completely different from the way anyone else was saying anything. And I think a lot of people have tried to emulate or copy or be just like him and have fallen short, because I truly believe he was on his own weird little wavelength. And for what we have, we should be grateful for.
Would you like to run through your list of some of his favorites?
Well, I'll just do 5, but
or your favorites of his.
Yes. Because I didn't love everything. I don't love the Dune film. That was, not his fault, I think. And anyway, Twin Peaks.
Are these in any particular order?
Yes, this is from 5 to 1. Like, in its entirety, all of it, from the 90s to the 2017 season 3 that he redid, or that he did. Eraserhead at number 4. But at the time that I was desperate to find Eraserhead, it was not easily available in the late 90s. I had to search high and low to get a copy of this. So the fact that even when you started dating me and you saw it for the first time, because I was making you watch David Lynch films, that copy I had that cost a lot of money to get that at that time. Number 3, Wild at Heart, for which he won his Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival in 1990. I think David Lynch had an obsession with Wizard of Oz, and I've read the book that this is based on as well, and that Wizard of Oz factors very heavily and more obviously than the film we're going to talk about today in that film. But Laura Dern and Nicolas Cage, Willem Dafoe, Isabella Rossellini. Anyway, number 2, I have Mulholland Drive, and I'm going to put a pin in that because we'll be speaking about that shortly. And my number 1 favorite film, it's in my top 10 favorite films of all time, is Blue Velvet. I just am in love with that film. Early Kyle MacLachlan, Laura Dern, of course, but it's Isabella Rossellini in that. As Dorothy, you put your disease in me. Dennis Hopper as well. That was an eye opener for me as a child watching that. And then, of course, one of my favorite moments, and we'll return to the name Roy Orbison, but as Dean Stockwell in a kind of ersatz drag in a mechanic shop performing to Roy Orbison is imprinted on my mind.
Well, I didn't know who David Lynch was until what year did I watch Eraserhead? 2008. And that is the one and only film that ever made me vomit. since then I've built up a tolerance to foolishness.
You know, in heaven everything is fine.
But you said I watched Wild at Heart. I swear I don't remember that movie.
You did, because one, you like Nicolas Cage, and two, we had a friend over at the when the Blu-ray version of that came out, and I had received it.
You said I watched Blue Velvet. I do not remember that movie.
You didn't have a good reaction to it, but you did watch it.
I know you put on a Twin Peaks something or other, and I just left.
You did. Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that the first Dune was David Lynch.
You did at the time we talked about it. I believe we talked about that before we watched Dune Part 2.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't have known that. So just to be honest. So then this week, the secret film was my choice, and I chose the 2001 surrealist neo-noir mystery art film Mulholland Drive.
It took David dying for me to get you to watch.
I'm so
Mulholland
tired
Drive.
of everyone asking me about this movie. Every time you mention I haven't seen it, and then I get comments like, how can you have not seen it? Well, it's like, well, the other movies I watched because I didn't care for, so I don't know why I would want to sit through 2.5 hours. And to be real honest, if someone would have asked me before he died about Mulholland Drive, I thought this movie was from the 60s. I didn't even know it was him. I thought that it was like I'm going to sound so ignorant, but I'm just being honest. I thought Mulholland Drive was a movie from the 60s starring James Dean.
Okay, it's not. But
so then when I heard that he had died, I thought, oh, well, it's my week to choose, so I should obviously choose a David Lynch film. And then I was looking, like I Googled his name and this movie popped up and I was surprised. And then when I saw that it was from 2001, I was shocked. So that is what made me want to watch it, because I felt so out of the loop. So we did.
Mm-hmm. And
you own the...
I own the Criterion.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love this film. It premiered at Cannes, and I think it's a goddamn travesty that this also did not win the Palme d'Or. I think it stings that it lost to something like Nanni Moretti's The Sun's Room, which I think is shallow and pedantic. And what's probably also more ironic is that Liv Ullmann was the jury president that year, and this film, Mulholland Drive, does very specific things that I think calls direct allusions to Ingmar Bergman's Persona, which she was one of the stars of. So the fact that it didn't get what it deserved there, but many people consider this one of the best films of the new millennium. It is. I think this is a divisive film, and it has many champions and many detractors. So I think that, if you don't love it, you shouldn't feel bad either.
Well, thanks for that reassurance.
Because I already know what you think.
Even though you wouldn't care what people thought. Okay, so the IMDb premise says, after a car wreck on Mulholland Drive renders a woman amnesic, she and a Hollywood hopeful search for clues and answers across Los Angeles in a twisting venture beyond dreams and reality. Okay, straight out the gate, because I know I posted a picture of the Blu-ray next to a Le Labo candle, which, thank you again. Our P.O. box is listed in the description below for people who want to send me candles. But this would be the quality I'm asking for. Anyway.
Oh, God.
So after I posted that picture on Instagram, I got all these comments and messages about how much people love the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So straight out the gate, I will say this. I think the screenplay and the story are 5 out of 5. I think it's pretty brilliant. There are so many layers, so many things to talk about. It's like the perfect film to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie has had years of analysis, and you can hop on YouTube right now and see hours and hours and hours of videos of people talking about this movie. So I'm not going to do it justice.
The footnote I want to make here is that I don't think either of us are saying it should be definitive, and many far wiser than we have pulled this movie apart and put it back together again. And I don't think that is the point of our conversation.
No, I'm just going to talk about how I felt about it. Mm-hmm. So screenplay, story, 5 out of 5. Brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
As a motion picture experience, like sitting, having to watch it, I mean, I did not enjoy watching this movie.
I disagree on that front, because I haven't seen it in years and years and years, and I thought this shit flew by, and I think it's profound, and it kind of made me fall in love with it all over again. Not that I hadn't been, but watching it now as a 40-year-old, it seems much less overwhelming to my brain. And I think it should be noted that David Lynch did get an Oscar nomination for Best Director.
So the story, I mean, this film is pretty like abstract. It's kind of all over the place. This is what I think the story is about. So here we go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Naomi Watts plays this lady. This is what I think the story is about, and I'm telling it like out of sequence.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
I think it's about Naomi Watts, this like small town girl who, you know, she's in this little dance competition. She does well. All those little hokey people, wherever she's from, tell her, girl, you need to go to LA. You can be a star.
She's from Canada.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Well, every little podunk town she's from, they think that she could be a star. So they tell her, you should go to LA. So she does. And when she gets out to LA, she's doing her thing and she meets this lady, Laura Herring,
Mm-hmm.
this beautiful brunette.
Who we first meet as Rita.
Well, let's not get into all that.
Okay, all right.
I'm just saying what I think the story's about. So Naomi Watts meets this lady, Laura Herring, in LA.
Mm-hmm.
And she too is trying to be a star.
Mm-hmm.
They develop a Lebesian romance.
Mm-hmm.
And Laura makes it. And Naomi gets jealous and hires a hitman to kill her because she knows she can't control her ass.
Mm-hmm.
So the guilt of that causes Naomi to kill herself.
Mm-hmm.
But the first like 2 hours of the movie is not what I just said. The first 2 hours of the movie, I believe, are like a dream of how Naomi Watts wanted this all to go,
Mm-hmm.
which is the opposite.
Yes.
That she comes out to LA, her aunt, who's an actress, lets her stay in her fabulous apartment in Hollywood, West Hollywood, while she tries to become an actor. And she does. She meets with directors who love her for her talent.
Mm-hmm.
And then she meets Laura Herring as this woman with amnesia and basically helps her. But in this dreamlike scenario, Naomi Watts is like the dominant one,
Mm-hmm.
and Laura Herring is kind of just like reliant on her.
Docile, codependent. Docile. Yeah.
So that's the dream. Now, there are a lot of other pieces to it that I think, again, as a story, as a screenplay, are just so brilliant in sort of representing what this woman, Naomi Watts, might have felt and
Mm-hmm.
so on. Okay. So then a friend, Steven, sent this list of 10 questions to ponder after you watch the movie,
Mm-hmm.
to sort of try to understand what it's about. And these questions come from David Lynch himself, who provided them, I think, in like the bonus features of a 20-something DVD release.
And please note that David Lynch has never given a definitive statement about what any of his films mean.
These are just clues.
And I think that he has always liked reading about what people interpret from his films.
So I think the best way to approach this is to just go through these questions.
Okay.
Or clues. So the first clue is pay particular attention in the beginning of the film. At least 2 clues are revealed before the credits.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the 2 clues that we see before the credits are, we see this sort of like psychedelic jitterbug dance sequence with Naomi Watts.
She's in it, but there is also a lot of doubling of images and shadow selves.
We also see 2 old people.
Mm-hmm.
who play a part in the dream sequence, because these 2 old people, I think, represent the people back in her little small town who told her she could be a star.
Mm-hmm.
But in the dream sequence, like the actual movie that the film starts with, or the way the film starts in this dream sequence, is that Naomi Watts is getting off the plane in LAX, and there's an older couple telling her, like, it was so nice meeting you on the flight over. We can't wait to see you in the pictures.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what they represent.
And then we see them in the taxi, and they are unable to stop smiling, which I find interesting that it's kind of like an automatic neurosis as they land in LA that they can't divorce themselves from.
We also see them again, but we'll mention that later. Okay, the other clue before the credits open, I think, is we see like a messy bedroom, and then the camera sort of like zooms into a pillow, which I think
is us going into the dream.
The dream.
Like it's kind of very meta, maybe. Like it's dreams within dreams, and who's dreaming?
Okay, the next clue that was given is notice appearances of the red lampshade. So we see this red lampshade that looks like it's been stapled, and then the base of the lampshade looks like tree roots.
Mm-hmm.
But we see it twice, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming that's supposed to ground us as to like this. So you already kind of said it, but Naomi Watts' character has two names, basically. In the dream sequence, her name is
Betty,
but in the, like in her reality, her name is Diane.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the lampshade, when we see it twice, is supposed to represent like that that's her lampshade.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next clue. Can you hear the title of the film that Adam Kesher is auditioning actresses for? Is it mentioned again?
Mm-hmm.
So the name of that film,
the Sylvia North story,
and it's brought up twice,
mm-hmm.
but in both scenarios, they have different directors and different lead actors. So in one scenario, the director is Justin Theroux, and he's being told that the lead actor is going to be this blonde named Camilla
Rhodes, played by, in that moment, Melissa George.
I can't believe I'm remembering any of this. In the other scenario, the director is someone else, and then the lead actor of that is the brunette, Laura Herring.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this also represents like a lot of the mirroring we see in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, mirroring doppelgangers and how they kind of maybe become indistinguishable to themselves.
Okay. I like that. The next clue. An accident is a terrible event. Notice the location of the accident. Okay, the accident happened on Mulholland Drive. I think the address is 6980. So that's the location in the beginning of the accident where we see Laura Herring's character
being driven
somewhere in this limo to this location, and she gets into a really bad accident. Also, for people who don't know, Mulholland Drive is a street in the Hollywood Hills.
Very windy.
And that area, and very, very popular, a lot of beautiful homes up there, a lot of celebrities live there. It's very windy,
and it's also I think notable because it's kind of a line of demarcation between north and south, like the poor kind of north Hollywood versus in the south Hollywood where the glamour might arguably be.
Perhaps, yeah. But so the location in the beginning of the film is where Laura Herring gets into this bad car accident where it's like some young people in two cars are racing and they hit the limo, and she ends up hitting her head, and that's how she gets amnesia. But towards the end of the film, now that we're out of the dream and it's Naomi Watts, like her actual reality, we see that that's the address she's being taken to this party where Laura Herring, her, like, I guess, a strange lover who has now made it big.
Mm-hmm.
We see that she has invited Naomi Watts there to basically tell her, I'm getting engaged to the director, Justin Theroux,
mm-hmm.
while also kissing on some other lady. So basically, like,
which is Melissa George,
shoving a dagger into her and twisting it.
Yeah. So also the site of an accident.
Yes. Okay. Then the next clue. Who gives a key and why? So we see that in the dream sequence, like the first part of the movie, that there's this blue box and then this blue key that opens the box. I think the box represents the dream and like waking up from the dream.
Mm-hmm.
But in the reality, we see that there's a hitman that Naomi Watts hired to kill Laura Herring. And he tells her, here's this blue key, which is a different kind of blue key from the blue key that opened that blue box in the dream. But it's a blue, like regular house key. And he says, I'm going to put this key on the count, or like on a counter or something. And when you see that key, that means I did my job. But the gag is he never gave her the key Like, I mean, he never handed it to her in her hand. He just put it on the table.
Mm-hmm.
So then if the clue is who gives a key, the only key we actually see being given to Naomi Watts is this lady named Coco.
Played by the great dancer, old Hollywood legend Ann Miller.
She's like the property manager of the building Aunt Ruth lives in.
Mm-hmm.
Naomi Watts' aunt, the apartment she's gonna stay in. Coco's like the one who manages it, and she is the one who gives Naomi Watts, Betty, at that point, the key to the apartment. So I think that represents like that this is the dream. Like here's unlocking this dream because this apartment situation is not real.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then if it is indeed the reality, in Diane's reality, she's playing Ann Miller as Coco again, is playing Justin Theroux's mother.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next clue. Notice the robe, the ashtray, the coffee cup. So we see these three items throughout the film. I think they're supposed to identify chronology.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think another really big clue that was given is what is felt, realized, and gathered at Club Silencio. So Club Silencio is this nightclub that we see Laura Herring and Naomi Watts go to. Mm-hmm. And there's like a MC.
Well, if we think about it, so we get the first sex scene of the film, and that's where Naomi Watts says, "I love you." And after sex, they're lying in bed, and Laura Herring starts saying, like out of her sleep, as if she's channeling it, Silencio. Remember?
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So then they end up at this Club Silencio.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the clue, what is felt? I think what's felt is sadness because we see the two ladies watching this show and they're crying. What is realized? What's realized is that everything is an illusion. Mm-hmm. And we know that because the MC of the show is literally saying that. He's saying like, this band you hear, that's not a real band. That's just a recording. And then we have Rebecca Del Rio,
as herself,
who sings a song that's just so beautiful and haunting.
Yoronda, which is a cover of, again, as I said earlier, we're going to reference Roy Orbison again. It's a cover of Roy Orbison's Crying, which clearly David Lynch liked.
Which is a very powerful moment in the film.
I love it so much.
But we also realize that she's not actually singing. It's like she's lip syncing. So So there's that. And then what is gathered? What's gathered is that blue box, which again I think represents the dream. Mm-hmm. So what's realized is everything is an illusion. What's felt is sadness, and what's gathered is the blue box.
And what's Silencio also is maybe kind of a nether region, because I feel like this film is about in between spaces as well. Is like death. Like when we hear Silencio, it's death. So that this in this moment of the film, it's kind of like the death of the dream, and we're forced back into reality because we return to Silencio, of course, at the very end of the film.
Okay, the next clue: did talent alone help Camilla?
No.
And we know that there are two versions of Camilla because earlier we said of the two versions of this film. So in the one version, it's Laura Herring as Camilla, the brunette, and her talent didn't get her that role. It was sex that got her that role. And then the blonde version of Camilla, there's another component to the plot that I didn't even mention. There are these like Hollywood producers who are strong-arming Justin Theroux to cast this blonde Camilla. And they almost come across like mob bossy type people.
Mm-hmm. Well, they have is it the Castigliani brothers or something?
Yeah, that's it. The Castigliani brothers. That's what I'm talking about. It's all very nebulous, but the point of it, I think, is that, well, I think this when I think about the brilliance of this script, I think this question is probably the main thing I think about. So these Castigliani brothers are strong-arming the director to cast this blonde Camilla. So no, her talent didn't get her this role. It's these Castigliani brothers. But I think, well, I'll get back to this. Okay, the next clue.
But this Castigliani's, it's a really great moment early in the film. Dan Hedaya and it's Angelo Badalamenti, the composer himself, who's composed many famous Lynch tracks, is the one with the espresso moment where he.
Yes, and I want to get back to that. The next clue, note the occurrences surrounding the man behind Winky's. So there's this Winky's Diner, which I think was shot. Is that the one on Fairfax and Wilshire?
It was like Denny's?
No, it's not that location.
Is it that location?
Is it? It looked from
I thought it was,
because it looked like the same place in what's that movie, Pulp Fiction, to me.
well, that's in Ladera Heights. That's
Oh, that's right. That's Pan's.
yeah. Mhm.
Okay, no, I'm thinking of a different.
No, I thought this was originally supposed to be a Denny's, but because of legal reasons, they didn't use, so it's renamed
Oh,
Winkies.
sure. Okay, so
And what's winking like? Winking is a state of your eye closing momentarily.
yeah. So the occurrences around Winkies. So Winkies is this diner, and we're first introduced to it because these two guys walk in, and we don't know who they are. We don't meet them again. Well, we meet the one again, but really, it's just these two guys are sitting at this diner, and the one is like, "Why are we here?" And the other goes, "Well, I had a dream." "Oh my God, you brought me here over a dream? Well, tell me what it is." "Well, you were here, and this thing happened, and then we leave the restaurant, and behind the dumpster, there's this really creepy man." So then the other guy goes, "Well, since we're here, let's do some immersion therapy."
And he says he's here to get rid of the feeling. So it's about confrontation. And notably, this is the only moment in the film where we're talking about their characters are discussing sleep and the mechanism of dreaming.
Right.
The other people talk about dreaming because Naomi Watts calls Los Angeles, Hollywood, a dream place, but that has a different meaning to what dream is.
So they decide to go outside and see if there's that homeless man behind the dumpster. And they do. And the homeless man pops out like the boogeyman.
Mm-hmm.
And it's my friend, Bonnie Aarons.
Yeah, we're familiar with Bonnie.
Bonnie is playing the homeless man.
Yeah.
And the guy who is scared faints.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then we see the homeless man again later in the film behind the dumpster, and now it's nighttime, and I think he has a fire going,
Mm-hmm.
and he's playing with that blue box, and he throws it on the ground, and then we see that like the box is in like a brown paper bag, and then all of a sudden those two old people from the beginning of the movie, like little miniature versions,
Mm-hmm.
come out and start dancing. Then we see the homeless man's face again. It's kind of used as like a transition to like the ending montage.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that homeless man represents the nightmare of
Mm-hmm.
what happened to Naomi Watts.
Well, yes, and then maybe in her dying moments, you know, those old people that were part of the jitterbugging, that were part of where she came from, that were part of that hopeful precipice of you are about to go on this dreamy adventure where you're going to make it after all, Mary Tyler Moore. And then, of course, that crashes and burns. But those figments are haunting. That like you still owe the people from the past, the people that told you this lie that you were something special, perhaps. And what I also, a lot of, I think, Mulholland Drive and all these side characters and all these pieces that don't really fit neatly into a puzzle on purpose. I think if you take a step back further from even that, I think that David Lynch is showing us that Los Angeles, this dream place, this place that we all come to dreaming, that we can't get rid of what brought us here, the dream that brought us here. I think LA is a collective nightmare for everybody here.
Let me get to the final clue. Where is Aunt Ruth? So in the beginning of the film, Aunt Ruth is Naomi Watts' aunt who's letting her stay in her fabulous apartment. And we're told that she's not going to be there because she's shooting a movie in Canada, but we never hear her speak. But in the end, we find out when Naomi Watts is sitting at that dinner where Laura Herring basically flaunts the fact that she's about to marry a man and she's kissing other women. It's that dinner scene where Naomi Watts says, "Oh, my Aunt Ruth died before I even arrived to LA."
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that clue reinforces the fact that it's all a dream. Okay. So those are all the clues. I think I did because I actually printed out these clues and I'm like, oh, I'm going to follow along. I thought it was going to be like very easy to follow along. But then about 30 minutes into the film, I realized like, oh yeah, this is not going to be easy to follow along with. So I abandoned trying to read these clues. So at the end of the film, I think it was pretty obvious that what I think the basic idea of what I thought it was what I got from the film.
Mm-hmm.
These clues are helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But again, and I know people are going to be so mad that I don't love this movie, I do think that this script is so brilliant because there's so much to read into. It feels so tragic.
I think it's a profound film. I
I
clearly
think the
love it.
story's
I love
profound.
this film much more than you do, but
I think the story's profound. I don't think that the visuals, the motion picture, the acting, I don't think it lives up to the script. I don't think visually it matches.
well, I think you don't really like David Lynch's style.
So there's that. And I think that clearly these are choices, and I appreciate choices. So I don't think this is a bad movie, because, like, how can you not respect someone making these deliberate choices? So I'm not saying it's a bad movie. It just doesn't connect with me, which is giving me the same feeling of, like, I mean, I've deleted so many comments, but we've gotten so many comments on Emilia Perez about how people hate the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved it. So,
Same.
so
And that's my opinion.
so I
And
can
that's okay.
totally appreciate that certain style. Like, I think the content of Emilia Perez bothers people too, but a lot of comments are just about the style of the film too. So I get it.
You are free to dislike
So
whatever you like.
So I don't think this is a bad movie. I just really, really, it's kind of astonishing how, like, the disparity in how much I like the script versus the motion pictures. But yeah, so, like, again, we don't have another hour to even chip into it, but I think that the character Naomi Watts plays, the tragedy of being, like, it's like a story as old as Hollywood, right? Of, like,
Mhm.
people thinking, like, I can come out here and people are telling me,
Mhm.
and you see it today. You see people who come out here, like,
It's
having been told that they're special.
Mhm.
And then I think that the clue about the plot point of the Castiglione brothers hit me the hardest, because you often hear people blame
everything else.
everything other than themselves for why they're not successful. And I think that's what the Castiglione brothers represent, is that something out of her control prevented her from being a star.
Yes, that there's this unseen power that's pulling all the strings all the time. Yeah.
So, but yeah, and then this love affair and the jealousy that she felt for this woman, and the idea that, like,
Well, I think the gender identity and sexuality, I think, factor a lot into this too. Like, if we're thinking about Laura Herring as Camilla, the one who's using her body kind of to get ahead, and her sexuality, even maybe the sexuality that maybe Diane's lesbianism also doesn't allow her to use her body in that way to get ahead.
yeah, that's a good point.
And how women, I think, become interchangeable because they don't have power, and how they're kind of forced to become entangled a bit in a way that maybe is also toxic.
I did have a couple of little notes that I wanted to get out there. So in the dream sequence, we get this random scene with the hitman killing this guy.
Yes, Mark Pellegrino.
And he shoots the guy, and then the bullet goes through the wall and hits this lady. So we hear her moaning. So now the hitman has to go over there and try to, like,
this big lady
put out this fire.
She thinks she got bit by something.
And she gets up and goes, "Ooh, something bit me bad." And I thought that was hilarious.
Uh-huh.
I think my favorite scene, the most powerful scene in the movie, is Rebecca Del Rio singing the song. But I think my favorite scene of the movie is this scene. And then, you know what this made me think of? How much I liked Robert Altman's
Shortcuts.
And what did I say? Imagine if Robert Altman and, who did I say?
You said the Coen brothers.
What if Robert Altman and the Coen brothers, is Robert Altman dead?
Yes.
Imagine if Robert Altman and the Coen brothers had the opportunity to remake this movie.
But
that's the movie
but
I think
then it
I
wouldn't
wanted.
But it wouldn't be Mulholland Drive because it is David Lynch.
No, but I think that's
you don't like his vibe.
The motion picture I wanted would have been like a Robert Altman, like, Shortcuts meets, like, Fargo kind of thing,
sure,
but with the same David Lynch script. But I thought that scene was so funny.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then
because everything that goes wrong, because then also the janitor sees him dragging this big lady. He's got to kill him, and then the alarm goes off. Yeah.
But what did that scene mean to me? I mean, you probably say a million things, but I think it meant, like, so much of success in this realm of, like, celebrity and Hollywood, it is about, like, who you know, what you're willing to do, and also luck.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of thought that scene with the hitman was about, like, luck
Yeah.
or unfortunate, you know,
Well, being in the right place at the right time, or
or
the
the
wrong
wrong
place
place
at
at
the
the wrong
wrong
time.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, like that lady just getting shot because she
She was just sitting next
and then the
door.
poor janitor, like I'm just trying to do my job, and here I am getting killed. Which also reminded me, there's a Dateline episode where a man dies and they're having a hard time figuring out how it happened because he initially the autopsy said that he had like his scrotum had an injury and they thought that it was like some sort of tumor or something. But then after 45 minutes, you realize that he was in a hotel room, and in the room next door, there were these three like biker guys just sort of drinking and playing with their guns. And one of them, their gun accidentally went off and went through the wall and hit this guy in the scrotum. But the way it punctured his scrotum, the pathologist, it was such an unusual wound that they had never seen that they chalked it up to something else. But it made me think of that case, like which is so random and maybe not interesting.
There's a lot of randomness, I think, that the film is touching upon as well. This was my introduction to a lot of things. I still remember, I rented this with my parents, and I think I'd seen The Ring with Naomi Watts, which was the same year, but Mulholland Drive did not play anywhere in a theater near where I grew up. And I remember being in the rental place with these raggedy little girls that were part of my friend group, and some stupid girl being like, "What's Mulholland Doctor?" That's always stuck in my head. And I was like, "You stupid fool." Anyway, this was my introduction to a lot of the remnants of old Hollywood, which I think that are also important footnotes in this film, including this was my introduction to Ann Miller and Chad Everett. Certainly not Robert Forster, who's only in one scene. But I think those are interesting elements of, the decrepit remnants of a Hollywood that has now long since passed by the time this film is being made.
Another note is that I don't care for Justin Theroux in general, and I thought in this movie he reminded me of Johnny Knoxville.
Oh, it was my introduction to Justin Theroux too, whose father, of course, is a very famous author.
I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. Oh, like the Theroux is his dad?
Paul Theroux is his dad.
Oh no, okay, that's not
who wrote Mosquito Coast and Half Moon Street.
Oh no, that's not who I was thinking. We didn't mention at a point, Laura and Naomi try to figure out, because at one point Laura Herring's character, this is in the dream sequence still, she's like, there's a name I remember now, it's Diana Selwyn or something. And so they research that, go to her apartment, and then in a circuitous way find her dead to the bed, which is another clue, I think, but it's very obvious what that means. I did want to mention when they're at Club Silencio, because now Laura Herring's character feels like she's in danger, so they try to put her incognito. That blonde wig she had on was the actual nightmare of this movie. I just want to point that out.
She doesn't look. Yeah, this was my introduction to Laura Elena Herring. I remember being transfixed at her beauty.
She's beautiful,
and that wig is not good. But that is the persona moment where it's like it's clear that these two women are in this moment kind of devouring one another. Really, even.
We should probably wrap this up. What would you give?
Like right now?
Well, I mean, we're running long.
Let's talk about the Rebecca Del Rio. I want to talk about two scenes.
Okay, go ahead.
As Betty, Naomi goes to a audition, and that's where she has that really uncomfortable moment with Chad Everett.
Okay.
In a scene that she's already practiced with Laura Elena Herring to much different effect. And Chad Everett is getting up on her, and you have these other three women, a casting director, her assistant, looking at, kind of watching this transpire. And then you have the director, presumably, who's completely out of touch with everything else everybody's saying. Naomi, whose performance, I think, again, David Lynch likes I think he's directing a lot of people to be kind of wooden and almost inauthentic, but there's usually always somebody that moves beyond that. Isabella Rossellini in Blue Velvet, for instance, or maybe even Dennis Hopper. But Naomi Watts, I think, gives a very layered, impressive performance in the entirety of this film. But anyway, this director, this white man, gives them a note right before Chad Everett and Naomi, and he says, "Don't play it for real until it gets real." And I think that's important about, and a side note, I think it was also brilliant that Rita with Laurel Lena Herring has amnesia, and she sees a poster for Rita Hayworth as Gilda, and Rita Hayworth as a star celebrity was that Gilda moment where put the blame on Mame. Like when you think of Rita now, you think of Gilda, and I don't know. There's just so many meta things there. Anyway, so Naomi does the scene with Chad Everett, starts crying. And they've taken the note from the director, don't play it for real until it gets real. And I think that as we get to the segue part of the film at Silencio, that's what this is. That's what Silencio is Rebecca Del Rio lip syncing to her own self. And we're told that it's not real. So it's not being played like it's real. And then these two women start crying and become bothered by it. And then that's when we get shortly after is leading us into the vacuum back to a reality, back to the box. And I don't know. I just found that it's so, to me though, is so powerful and effective. And I think neither of us brought up, I think The Wizard of Oz, which Lynch, of course, was obsessed with. I think that is an interesting way to maybe read some of the doppelganger identities in this. Anyhow.
Oh, is that all you had to say?
No, but since you have given me the 5-minute warning, there we go.
Well, there we go. What would you give this movie?
4.5. I think it's brilliant.
I am going to give it 2.5 out of 5 because I didn't enjoy watching the movie.
It's okay,
but I think it's a brilliant script and a great conversation. I think,
I didn't even bring up Lee Grant. Oh, I love Lee Grant, and she has that one moment as the creepy lady in the dream sequence in Ann Miller's Tenant that says there's something wrong with a woman in this apartment. Anyway,
all right. Well, that's Mulholland Drive. People, if they haven't seen it, I would recommend watching it with other people maybe, and just let it wash over you. And
and again, though,
be prepared to talk about it.
You never want to watch this movie again, I know, but I think that it is such an interesting movie to revisit after
I'd have to be paid to watch it again, for sure.
I rest in peace, Mr. David Lynch, for giving us something that no one else has ever been able to
talk about. Okay, what's coming this week? I know the review for The Presence.
Just Presence.
I know Presence.
Soderbergh.
And the movie The Monkey we're watching.
Yeah, we get to see an early screening, thankfully, since it comes out while I'm in Sundance, and then Berlin right around the corner. I believe you and I are covering a couple Sundance titles.
A couple.
The only competition films, because I'm doing it online. Once again, I don't want to go to Utah. And we're seeing Flight Risk, that new Mark Wahlberg classic. Did Mel Gibson direct that? That's coming.
I don't know, but I'm predicting he's going on my worst hair list just from the trailer. There better be an explanation for that hair.
It looks nice and silly. There's a Shudder release I think we're going to do too called Grafting. That sounds really good.
Oh, and then Companion.
Oh, that's the week after.
Oh, week after. Okay, never mind. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
No.
Ta-ta.